a city council meeting to order. And this March 12th, and the city council meeting is called to order at 6 o'clock. Sammy, would you do roll call, please?
Yes, we have Mayor Bell. We have
Present.
Councillor Engelbretson here, Councillor Fox
Here.
Councillor Lehman,
Here.
Councillor Smith
Here.
Councillor Wells.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First agenda item is city council vacancy. We do have an application, and that is in your red folder. If you didn't read that from last time or weren't able to, I do want to remind everybody to make sure that your mics are turned on and they're close to you so that we can capture the recording. And Brandon is here tonight. And Brandon Rhodes does everybody know Brandon? Brandon, no?
Last meeting. Yeah, I met last meeting.
Yes, you were here last meeting. Brandon, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. And then I'll open it up to council to ask anything further. But again, we are in a tight timeline. We do have Carrie here with us, and she is on a tight timeline. So we're going to try and move this along. Brandon, can you tell us why you're interested in becoming a member of the Cobourg City Council?
Sure. My work is developing Cobourg Commons as a hub for the common good. So getting to understand all the different characters and possibilities around town for bringing uplift and connection and life to this town and harnessing the beauty that's already here is something I'm already steadily working on. And when several people whose voices I admire persistently nudged me about this, I gave it a good consideration and thought, that'd be kind of fun. Be nice to see how the sausage gets made.
It is pretty interesting to see how the city runs. Are there any unique skills or experiences that would bring you value as a city councilor?
I hope so. Yeah, I've spent most of my adult life working and volunteering at the intersection of community development, faith, and food. So I've participated in both as a attendee as well as a facilitator at a variety of conferences around those themes, particularly asset-based models of community development, and at the intersection of, I suppose, social enterprise and neighborhoods, how businesses can be participants in seeking the life and flourishing of their neighborhoods. Yeah.
Do you have a particular role that you feel that is important for city councilor?
I think that begins by understanding the roles that are already at work and playing well with the ecosystem that's already developed. I try to lead with curiosity. It's a growing edge of mine instead of certainty. So learning more about what's already underway and being a good team player is how I work.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from city councilors? Councilor Fox.
Do you have any experience with budgeting?
Yes, I was on the Herb Memorial Union's board of directors. That's the student union center down at the U of O. When I was a undergrad there, I was there on that board for 2 years, and it was a $6 million annual budget for a state auxiliary.
Thanks.
I was not on the budgeting team, thankfully, but I was an active member in those conversations.
Anything else? Councilor Smith.
I'm interested in the asset-based community development. As a counselor, can you see a way that you could implement or explore that for the city of Cobourg?
I think that is going to begin by continuing to get a better sense of how this council works around town. The ad hoc transportation committee is I'm on that, and when the first meeting happened, I believe Adam said, this is a good experiment in just catalyzing with the short amount of time, a softer commitment than a standing committee to just get people more activated where they are. So I think also, I mean, I guess I'd speak a little bit more for my role working at Coburg Commons, but having quarterly get-togethers of how can we be as neighbors, activating our latent gifts to create what we want in our town. So I'm curious how city council can be participants in those similar kinds of questions. Because I think people are often waiting for an opportunity to say yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? If not, I will entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Rhodes to the Coburg City Council.
I move to appoint Brandon Rhodes as city councilor for the term of office ending December 31st, 2024.
Have a second?
I second.
We have a motion by Counselor Fox and a second by Counselor Lehman to appoint Brandon Rhodes as city councilor for the term of office ending December 31st, 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're happy to welcome you. Sammy, will you please administer the oath of
Oh
office?
my. How do I do that?
There, I'll have you raise your right hand, please. I, Brandon Rhodes, do solemnly affirm.
I, Brandon Rhodes, solemnly affirm
That I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the state of Oregon,
and of Oregon,
and of the charter, ordinance, and rules of procedure for the city of Coburg.
and of the charter, ordinances, and rules, procedures of the city of Coburg.
And that I will faithfully and honorably perform the duties of city councilor for the city of Coburg.
And I will faithfully and honorably perform the duties of city councilor.
Congratulations. We'll catch a picture after,
Okay.
I think, in the paying attention to time here and knowing Carrie's waiting. So thank you, Brandon. You get to sit right here next to Counselor Fox. So you've got a red folder. And we'll go over that in just a few minutes. So we're happy you're on board. Sammy, are there any proposed changes to tonight's agenda?
Mayor, I would like to, if it's okay with you, go over the changes afterwards. We did miss the Pledge of Allegiance, so do the Pledge of Allegiance and then go straight to Carrie, and then we'll get into our agenda if that
Alright,
works.
Let's do that, and I do apologize for missing that. I just was hopping right along. Apologize. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone signed up to provide public comment tonight? No.
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Adam, would you please go ahead and introduce tonight's special guest?
Sure, thank you. We are lucky to have Carrie Connolly here with us, attorney with Local Government Law Group. She has, I don't know if she has presented, I would assume some of you might know her, newish to me, obviously, but been a great asset in putting together what's in front of us, the meatiest part of our agenda tonight, the public contracting ordinances and resolutions. The objective here is to kind of revise and update the contracting rules that we operate in. And the packet in front of you is kind of a mechanism to do that. It'll take several meetings to enact it fully. So tonight is the first reading of the ordinance that basically authorizes the ability to use the resolution process for the contracting rules packet and for the spending authority that goes along with public contracting. Really quickly, the benefits, and I'll let Carrie speak. The benefits are as to be as consistent as possible with state contracting rules. Often, cities often deviate from that. They have the legal ability to. It sometimes is very effective and oftentimes can create challenges when it's not consistent with state law changes, local ordinance doesn't, that sort of a thing. And the other part was spending authority. We discussed at a prior meeting, I think, with the cost of items and the efficiency, operational efficiency desires, increasing that what I think somewhat significantly, but not too far past the comfort level of council, is important part of the conversation as well. So I will turn it over to Carrie, and then we'll finish off. Carrie does have another city council, I think, to go to. So we'll get as much time as we can from her, and then we will continue on with the first reading of the ordinance if we can't get to it
And
while Carrie's with us.
many of you may remember meeting Carrie when she helped us with the changes in ordinance with the camping rules.
Oh, great.
and
Yep.
When we were looking at trying to figure out what we could do as the homeless crisis loomed. So thank you very much for Carrie, and thank you for coming again tonight to help us with this sort of complex issue.
Absolutely. I just am so appreciative you guys are letting me up here virtually rather than in person again, because we have this back-to-back thing, but it is kind of fun to be able to do both. And welcome to the new counselor. It's exciting, and thank you for your service. This is probably incredibly overwhelming. There's just hundreds of pages of public contracting that we're putting before you. So I have to say that your city administrator, he just did a fabulous overview of why we're here. And so I will just give an additional preliminary overview of what you're looking at, and then I'm available for questions. So what happened was Ann Davies and I work closely. I know Ann advises you as your city attorney, and she tends to refer public contracting matters to me. And so I was helping with a public contracting matter and asked about public contracting rules, which we just updated our packet that I provide to our clients in 2023 to accommodate changes that were going into effect January 1st, 2024. And when I saw your rules, I noticed they were, I think, adopted in 2005, so slightly out of date. And also, since there's no charter requirement for your city to include your public contracting rules in an ordinance, you just get far more flexibility to be able to update as needed when the legislature modifies the Oregon Public Contracting Code, if you adopt public contracting rules by resolution. And so the materials in front of you are multifold. First off, we are pulling out material from your existing ordinance, which is, just getting the names right. So you have ordinance A255 in front of you. It's repealing ordinance A91C. A91C is the one that I reviewed and looked at and said, wow, a lot of this could come out and be in a resolution. And so the first iteration of this was a track change version that just showed, are you okay with us pulling all of this out and replacing it with rules adopted via resolution? And in the process of doing so, we are also updating those rules to reflect the changes that have occurred since, I believe, 2005 until now, almost 20 years later. So the first thing is the ordinance. We are also continuing your city administrator as your purchase manager, but we are taking out the spending authority thresholds that were in the ordinance. Again, we're proposing those be adopted by resolution. I think a later conversation, or whether I'm here or not, is going to involve finalizing what those thresholds that you would like to appear in the resolution to come before you on April 9th. So let's just make sure we don't conclude tonight's conversation without providing staff that direction. And let's see, so you have the ordinance, being updated. You have the authority to adopt rules by resolution. We are recommending that you adopt spending authority by resolution. And then you have my proposed rules that will be adopted by resolution. And associated findings that support the exemptions. So the rules are divided into 4 sections. Division 26, which is general provisions. Division 27, which is goods and services. Division 28, which is now architects and engineers primarily. Division 49, which is public improvements. And then you have a 5th section that is not reflecting the AG model rules. I'll come back to that, which is proposed exemptions. The findings support that last category, the exemptions. That's a lot of information that I just went over. Are there questions at this point?
Questions? Counselor Lehman.
Just under page 10, the 4th whereas. Do you have that in front of you?
Can get there, Ken.
We're talking about the ordinance
Looking at the resolution.
resolution.
Carrie, I
Yes.
can read it to you.
Oh, no,
It's-
yep, I'm there. Which recital? Was it the 4th, did I hear?
Yes, so my question has to do with that the city council must specifically state that the model rules adopted by the Attorney General do not apply to the city. Just a little more comment on that explanation.
So, yes, thank you. And I don't know if you heard me, I did say I would circle back to explain what the model rules are. So Oregon Public Contracting Code is set in state statute. It's ORS 279A, B, and C. 279A says it directs the Attorney General's office to create public contracting rules for every single contracting entity in Oregon. And unless you opt out, you are automatically governed by those AG model rules. So my rules, which you can see in the ensuing pages, do reflect the AG's rule divisions 46, 47, 48, and 49. But I've pulled out provisions that don't apply to the city, that only apply to the state. I've taken out procedures that are overly detail oriented that isn't required by statute. And I've bridged some gaps that state statute says you may adopt rules. You may do this if you have rules that say X, Y, and Z. And the AG, for some reason, didn't include that allowance in their rules. So I've tried to give you a little more flexibility and brought these proposed rules more in conformance with state law, dropping stuff that doesn't apply to you. And so then, because the legislature says thou shalt follow the AG model rules, in order to not follow the AG model rules, it is incumbent upon you in this resolution to specifically opt out. And so we have that opt-out language that says, not going to follow the AG model rules, we're adopting our own rules.
So in essence, we're choosing not to follow rather than we're stating that they do not apply.
Correct.
You can choose, right? It's not.
And, there's many different ways to go at this. Some entities only operate under the AG model rules. Some entities say the AG rules apply to us, except as we set forth here, and they have like 3 pages of rules or 5 pages of rules. I find it most helpful to have everything all in one place so that staff can just look to it and say, here's how we do public improvement contracts, rather than having to look in 2 or 3 different places, some of which may be online and difficult to access.
That answer your question, Counselor Lehman?
No, I don't understand, but that's okay. I'll move on.
Okay, does anybody else have questions for Carrie?
To follow up on it, it sounds like the city can adopt their own rules for contracting for public improvements, right? All we have to do is say we opt out of the state's requirements or the AG's requirements, and we can do really whatever we want. That's kind of,
Well-
I'm reading it.
And then
the
the
reason
reason
would
would
be
be for what?
So no matter what, you
We
have to,
have a reason.
Well, we should know.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
wait,
right.
go ahead, Carrie.
think about it as a kind of a tiered system. So at the top is the state statute. You have to comply with state statute. State statute then says you will also comply with AG model rules unless you decide to adopt replacement rules that also reflect state statute. That's the stage that you're at now, I guess, sort of, except that you currently have an ordinance that adopted your own rules. So you've already opted out of the AG model rules, but what you have in place is 20 years old. Maybe it's been updated over time, but so you're in the worst of all worlds. You've opted out of the AG model rules, but they govern to the extent that your ordinance that we're proposing you replace doesn't reflect current law, which is the case in certain. And just to let you know, the legislature has amended the Oregon Public Contracting Code at least every legislative session. So since 2005, that's been 20 amendments, somewhere between 12 and 20 amendments.
Carrie, maybe you can correct me, but I think the objective is to get the parts that we do, the parts that of the AG rules that apply to us, that is part of our regular operations, we are encapsulating, and it's consistent with ORS. And the mechanism that we're creating by resolution allows us in the future to more easily adjust and keep up, so we aren't 20 years behind, and don't have to do a massive overhaul every 10, 12, 15 years. We are merely setting up a structure by which we can then orderly with our legal service assistants as the legislature changes things, we pretty much as a routine adopt those updates, so we don't develop these inconsistencies between our rules and the other rules, with, of course, the upper umbrella of ORS that everyone has to comply with.
And thanks. There's so many pieces to this that I should have also informed you that when you opt out of the AG model rules, there's another legal requirement that you then, each time the legislature updates statute, you're required to look at your rules and decide if they need to be updated, which may or may not have been happening in the past couple decades. But at this point, if you choose to move forward, I review all changes to the state law, and I look at my rules and I make changes to my rules that I think are needed to bring you into compliance with state law. And we send out a notice then every time I update the rules, or even when we don't. Hey, I looked at the rules, no changes are needed. Hey, I looked at the rules, we have an update packet available. And we just do it on a flat fee. This time it was $95, pretty inexpensive. Because I do this for so many entities around the state.
And then
Keep us in compliance for
Mhm.
now and in the future.
right, and then we get on that annual schedule, and then we can just prepare that and put it forward. So we maintain a current set of rules to operate by. And the one other piece I'll add that Carrie mentioned earlier is the searching and comparing. Here's your own local, but it talks about certain parts, but you have to go to ORS for other parts. I've been in an organization where we've had some of that, and errors can happen. Frustration can surely happen. Communication between, a department head looking to set up a time frame for how things are going to go. They can get skewed when you have things in different places. I think from an administrative standpoint, this structure works really well.
I also want to reassure you, this is kind of your first brush at this, and we will be spending more time. You will have between now and your next meeting to spend more time looking at the rules resolution and that portion of the packet. What's really important tonight is just to understand whether you choose to go this proposed route or some other way, we've got to update your ordinance. And so that's the first step. And then what rules you choose to adopt and how you choose to adopt them is your choice. You have a little more time on that.
So yeah, just to clarify that is ordinance A 255. So tonight, the first reading that'll be after this discussion that will formally have the first reading is really for just ordinance A 255, which is pages 7, 8, and 9 in the packet. The remainder of it we put in because they all have context and that's part of the entire package. But tonight's must review task is the ordinance.
But I really appreciate that staff put the full packet in front of you because the more time you touch it, the less intimidating it'll be.
Anything else for the good of the order? Or shall we let Carrie take off for her next meeting?
I'm fully available to staff if you come up with questions afterwards or that even you pose later in this meeting, and that could be relayed to me, and we
Thank
can
you.
get back to you for the April 9th timeline.
Excellent.
Adam, was there anything else, or Sammy, was there anything else you wanted me to address?
No, I think we covered it. Thank you very much for carving out a little time and enjoy your next council meeting.
My pleasure. Yeah, no, thank you.
Lots to
You're
digest.
giving me 4 minutes, man. I got a lot of time.
What you do with that time?
Yeah.
I know, dinner, perhaps?
Yeah, that's your commute time. Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you so much. Take care. Bye.
Lots to digest. But this will, as many things that we've found, there are always more pressing issues. And so sometimes we jump over the ones that aren't as pressing. But I think what we have found as we've been doing contracts in the last few months or last year is like, oh, well, we don't quite like the way this flows. So if we bring ourselves in compliance with the state and make it easy for us to keep that updated, I think it's probably a good way to move forward, but certainly we have time to digest this. It will do the first reading tonight, and then we'll bring it back at the April meeting to massage into final format.
And Mayor, just real quick, just to reiterate the like you say, the rules and the spending authority, that's really a conversation for April.
Right.
This ordinance allows that to occur. Without this ordinance, then we're not able to adopt anything by resolution, and everything would have to be, as it is now, contained within an ordinance and updated anyway, but contained within an ordinance rather than being able to keep this current over time with the maintenance that we talked about prior.
And one of the things that as we get to it is I'll be asking council to give staff direction tonight in terms of what that spending maximum is. So be thinking about that. You don't have to make a decision tonight. You don't have to vote on it tonight, but we will be looking for staff direction as we move forward. So are we ready to move on to the public hearing? I will now open the public hearing and hold the first reading at 6:29 on ordinance A 255 and ordinance repealing ordinance A 91-C and authorizing the adoption of public contracting rules and staff spending authority by resolution. Are there any questions from council? All on overload. Do we have anyone signed up or registered to speak?
No, there's nobody signed up.
Unless there's something else, I will close the first reading of public hearing at 6:30. And the second reading of ordinance A 255 is scheduled for April 9th of 2024. how would you like to address the spending authority at this point?
Yeah, I think just getting, as Mayor said, you don't have to decide that. It would just be maybe helpful for direction about which draft to put in front of you for the April 9th meeting. I handed it out in draft format at a prior council meeting, so we had a little conversation about it. Basically, the goal is to have the tiering of the spending authority. And of course, the city administrator is in the resolution, the purchasing agent as well. And so that position has the highest spending authority. The typical, there's been some recent activity on the Oregon City Manager's listserv about exactly this topic, about who has what spending authority and the pros and cons and merits for all of that. Oh, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very
yes.
much. Yes.
So it's in the actual resolution. Thank you, Sammy. I was going to point that out. So
Yep.
on page 120
Yes.
of that, you'll see the yellow highlighted
thank you.
areas. Those would be the various spending amounts.
Right.
The two suggested, we could give then direction to staff from council. So I want you to be thinking about that. And we talked about that a little bit at the last meeting.
We did. It's currently 10,000. The maximum I believe is by state statute is 250,000. Large cities obviously are the ones that lean that way, the few largest cities. Most cities are, I've seen a range of 25 to 150,000. Regardless of the spending authority granted by this resolution, though, they have to be expenses that have budget appropriation. But I think, in the 50 to 75 range is kind of a good balance between operational efficiency and council oversight. My probably 5149, would lean towards 75,000. I have no issues at all of it being 50,000 if that's a comfort level for council. It solves a lot of the operational thing. I think the example we used last meeting was, the pump and motor for the wellhead. It doesn't take much now for things to be over 10,000. And then that means that we wait for a council meeting to get authorization to purchase. There are emergency clauses and all of that, and some straddle, is it emergency, is it not, or is it just convenient to hurry up and call it emergency, which I'd rather not do. I'd rather not manipulate, the definition. I'd rather just have clarity. The next tiers then are what department heads are authorized. And then, then the other staff authority, in that the 1,500 is very typical that I've seen in many, many organizations. It's a small amount. It allows that occasional purchasing, but that isn't automatically granted to staff. That is still by delegation by the city administrator and their department head before they're even granted that authority. But the maximum, regardless of if they're granted, would be 1,500. And I've talked with our department head team on the 10,000. I think there's a good comfort level there. We're small enough and nimble enough that we talk about expenses like that at that threshold. So having me around to double check that, I think there's a comfort level not to get too high, not to exceed 10 at the department head level, which I think that's nice. So some direction from council on kind of that overall preference of probably at that the 75 versus 50 is probably the key direction we're looking for.
Well, I was just looking at our general fund budget for expenditures, and for example, for the year ending fiscal year end 2024, we have a total general fund budget for our expenditures of 3.4 million. So if we take the 75, which is the higher one, divided by that, 3,436,000, that would be 2% of our total expenditures, which I feel is a reasonable, risk basically for giving purchase authority.
And again, all of these have to be budgeted for. They have to be within the budget.
Yep.
Yep, no, that's a great, thank you for that. It's a great point on that relative financial risk.
Totally
Yep,
not.
that's how that's how it's measured.
Counselor Lehman.
So currently we become aware of contracts because most of them exceed 10,000 and it has to come to council for approval. If we increase this to 75,000, for example, will council still be made aware that the contract existed after the fact, after you've authorized it? Do we become aware of it at council meetings in some way, shape or form?
We definitely, easily, it isn't laid out in statute or resolution, but and I absolutely could make a category in the monthly city administration
I
for,
would like to see that we
That's great.
still see the contract existence and
Yeah.
rationale and
Know that there has been a spending that occurred.
Yep.
Rather than waiting until the next council meeting to approve it, which is the way it's set up
well, we
now.
wouldn't be approving any of the.
That's correct. The way it is set up now, we have to wait for anything over that amount, which sometimes can lead to delays.
With that caveat that it's part of a report that comes to council that the contract was awarded, what the amount was, what the purpose was.
Yeah.
And I would approve the increase in
yeah, and I think that's a great idea. And I actually like it for touting the work we're doing, because usually it's a news I want to share is progress, right? It's we're moving forward on stuff. So
So do we, are there any other questions or comments? Do we have direction for staff in terms of which amount you would like to go with? Either 50 or 75,000 for city administrator. In an emergency, it would either be 100 or 150,000. Which of those amounts? So when we get the resolution back, it will be a clean copy.
I'm comfortable with the 75,000.
for A.
Agreed.
And then in an emergency, it would be either be 100,000 or 150,000.
it was designed to just be double whatever your selection, but it doesn't have to be, but that was the design. Yeah.
So we'll stick with that. Counselor Wells?
We have nothing budgeted for emergencies, obviously. Do we have a fund that money would come out of?
Would you like to describe what that might look like?
Yeah, this defines, the resolution defines what an emergency is, and it's an emergency for procurement. It's not necessarily emergency like Emergency Operations Center and natural disaster. So if like the pump, if it was summer and well 2 was not operational by this definition, that's an emergency. And if I needed to execute something, we could have, and then we come back. And this one I think does, I think there was something in one of the versions about notify, actually, that's in the declaration of emergency. I'll back up. But it still has to be, in no way can funds that are not appropriated be spent without going to council. Our emergency operations plan has some financial processes built into that about when you declare an emergency, an actual declaration of emergency, and then council has to ratify that declaration, then some different rules come in than what's here. But this is limited to this definition of an emergency, and really it's more operational emergency, and it still would have to meet appropriations. If I was spending over that, we'd have to have a conversation about transfers and movement.
No one can spend money that we don't already have.
Right.
Earmarked.
It's not,
Counselor Wells.
it's not cumulative, is it? So you have authority to say we vote on the 75,000. It wouldn't be 100 to 150 over and above the 75,000? Because it would be.
In the emergency piece,
Right.
it's just per trans. So if there was a contract that was 125,000 and it met the definition of emergency, that would be, this resolution would authorize me to sign something for 125,000 that if it didn't meet emergency, I'm limited to 75.
If it's an emergency and it's a $225,000 charge,
I'd have to come here.
It would have to come back to
Okay.
council.
It could
declare
be
an
the
emergency.
75 that you're authorized plus. the
Correct.
150.
Or if it was emergency that met the declaration, the different standard of an emergency, the highest standard of true emergency in our emergency operations plan, that would have its own set of rules.
Counselor Lehman?
Just a 30-second relevant digression since you brought it up. And that happened to be with regard to an emergency declaration. We had this conversation but never followed it up, in that the council has to be convened, has to have public notice. And we were talking about some way to get around to that so that you can get approval for that. And maybe just by declaration by the mayor, rather than going through the formal process of a public notice of having a hearing, a meeting, getting a quorum, and having council vote on the emergency declaration.
I'll look and
Come
see what,
back to that.
yeah, I'll look and see what we have,
That's why it
but
was a 30
Yeah.
second.
there is a
Thank you.
mechanism that provides the interim piece that then has to be ratified by council. And I'm not sure if state law allows us to do something different than that, but I'll dig into that.
Take a look at that.
Yep.
Counselor Fox.
Just clarification on my original statement, when I said I'm comfortable with 75,000, that was for A, C, and E. All three.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. And then in terms of department head authority, again, this would involve, we're either asking, are you okay with them deciding on 5,000 or 10,000? So we need direction from, and Counselor Fox.
I would ask Adam, what does he think?
I think 10,000 is pretty appropriate. In my last place, it was 25 for department heads. I think we talked about it. We're comfortable at 10. 5 means a lot more stuff is landing at my desk and waiting on me.
So I would say if the current city administrator is comfortable with the higher amount, so am I.
What did we decide on B?
Yeah, what did we decide? I don't think we did.
What I'm hearing to bring back would be 75, 150, 10 for staff.
I'm okay with that. 150,
All right.
emergency.
I think we have clarity in terms of direction for staff. Again, this was not being voted on tonight. This is simply giving staff direction so that we can come back with a clean resolution at our next meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, consent agenda.
So we didn't need to move
Oh.
on the prior item? Although
No,
it says
no,
suggestion motion.
This
okay.
was the first
Great.
reading on this and then giving staff direction to make a clean
Very good.
resolution or ordinance.
Second reading will actually have language for adoption of the ordinance. Yep.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. So with the consent agenda, counselors may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion by requesting action prior to consideration. We have the minutes of the February 13th city council meeting. Are there any council members who wish to remove an item or amend an item in the consent agenda? If I hear none, I will entertain a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
A second.
We have a motion by Counselor Fox and a second by Counselor Smith to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Any opposed? The motion passes. Let's see, I have to think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5, 5 and 0. Okay.
I suppose one abstention by,
Yeah.
technically one
That
abstention.
was unfair.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we have ordinances and resolutions and contracts next. We have the wastewater planning professional service agreement with Kennedy Jenks and a staff report by Adam Hanks and Brian Harmon.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian is here to talk about any of the actual scope details. But as you recall, this is one that we asked prior, I think in January, to allow for a sole source contracting procurement process because of Kennedy Jenks' kind of unique ability to assist us since they had done work with us prior on our wastewater system. And so this is the resulting contract that came from that conversation. And in the meeting when we talked sole source, we're expecting around a $50,000 to $55,000 contract. When Brian was getting together with the consultant I sat in as well, we got direction that to do what maybe we had hoped was a 50 to 55, a scope within that price point really is quite a bit more than that. And secondarily, the Kennedy Jenks suggested that we don't need to do that yet. So the scope that you have in front of you is slightly reduced scope from what we thought we were going to be asking them to do for us, but we feel very confident that it's actually right sized for what we need now, which is detailed in the contract. The scope is pretty tight, but it's essentially what we need right now to make some future decisions and defer kind of the next tasks that we thought we might be able to squeeze in here. But not only do we not have the funds, we actually don't, timing wise, it's not advised yet. So we don't need to do those extra pieces. So the contract in front of you is for just over 33,000, and it provides capacity analysis, and that then drives future analysis and decision making on capital improvements. What we might need into the future for the plant to either expand its capacity needs or incrementally grow.
Brian, is there anything that you need to let us know on this?
Nope, city administrator said it all. Unless you have any questions.
Are there any questions for Brian? Well, that's sort of a pleasant surprise, and it still looks like they're going into the future to give us the projections that we need.
Yeah, just as a reminder, we have a similar contract underway on the water side with Consular, and really, it's really working timing wise, working really well. We're slowing down, or we're in a pause. I mean, a natural pause on the water infrastructure project side. Perfect opportunity to really look at what are our capacity analysis and needs on the water side. And this contract is allowing us to do pretty much the exact same thing in the wastewater world. So we'll end up with in fairly short order, really quality capacity analysis for both of our major systems.
And as I recall, we've worked with Kennedy Jenks for quite some time, and they are very familiar with our system and have really helped us develop and keep that going and in a very reasonable way.
Yeah, they designed the system.
Yep.
I believe you're correct.
And
That predates me, Counselor Fox, but you would know these things.
and we have a special system,
Yes, we
relatively
do.
special system. So it's different.
Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns about this contract? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept this contract.
I will move to approve the proposed wastewater capacity planning assistance contract between the city of Coburg and Kennedy Jenks in the amount of $33,398 and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract.
I have a second.
Second.
Thank you. There is a motion by Counselor Engebretson and a second by Counselor Fox to approve the wastewater capacity planning assistance contract between the city of Coburg and Kennedy Jenks in the amount of $33,398 and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract. Is there any discussion from council? All those in favor? Please say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Nope. So the motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Now we're going on to the Springbrook contract for payroll software. I think we've heard about this before, but we're interested in hearing more.
All right, Greg Peck, our finance director, is gonna hit on some of this with me. I'll lead off. Yes, as we have talked about, Springbrook is our financial system software. We use it for most everything that we do. One key piece that has been outsourced and done as a third party rather than being a part of the Springbrook system, excuse me, is payroll. And so before you is a contract that we have worked for a number of months with Springbrook on to try and ensure that it can be delivered at a price point that we can both afford and we think is reasonable. Neither were the case when we started the conversations. We think both are the case now. It is, I've listed in the staff report, whoops, I'm on one in front. There it is. Some bullets that Greg put together there that he can go over and really just, I'll hit the dollar amounts. We currently pay Springbrook on an annual basis for kind of licensing support and upgrades because it's a software as a service type system. Just a little over 22,000. That would rise annually to a little over 28,000. So it's just under 6,000 a year for the payroll module annual support services. The implementation costs are the one-time cost, and that is all software providers have what's called an implementation consultant that steps through and builds the back end with us, does training on maintaining the back end tables, and then connecting up the various pieces of data with the in this case with employees, and then setting up also the online portal that goes with the employee side to access all of that. So that was the primary negotiation. It wasn't the annual support fee. It was how many hours and what would be the cost of the implementation piece. So we were able to get that down considerably. So the item in front of you is really 16,500 in a one-time cost, and then agreement and acceptance of the adding on to our current support package by a little under 6,000. So yeah, Greg, you have anything you want to add, or we can take questions?
Well, Greg, tell us why this is a good thing to do.
Sure. So thank you, Adam, and good evening, council. As I've it's almost been a year. So March 27th, I think it's been 1 year now. So one of the things that I've done, and I had some experience in over the years, is payroll. And as time went on, it became very evident to me that perhaps the way that we're doing our payroll and the company that we're using, that it would be more beneficial for us to bring it in-house. Some of the reasons why I arrived at that conclusion, some of the big ones were PERS. Some of the reports we have on the federal and state level, by bringing it in-house, utilizing the software program that we have, allows us to better integrate our systems with those systems outside of here. Currently, I mean, just using PERS, currently, the payroll company we're using does not do that, and nothing against them. There's many payroll companies that just simply don't do that service there. So by utilizing our own in-house payroll system, it does allow us to do all of that. And especially the control aspect of it, it gives us total control, direct control over our payroll system. If you can go and if you had a chance to go through and read some of these bullets I put together, I talked about direct control, integration, efficiency and accuracy, employee access. That's something that I think as we move into the future, it kind of goes right along with transparency. Having an employee having the ability to access basic documents, tax documents, simple documents like that is worth its weight alone. let's see, I put flexibility on here, little things that we don't think of. For flexibility, we make a mistake. There's a process and a set of steps I have to go through by contracting it outside to make those corrections, where if it's in-house, we make mistakes, we correct it, we fix our books, and we move on. So nonetheless, I think in review of the software program, you know, the demos and whatnot that we did and went through at Springbrook, it's a really stout program. It covers everything that we need plus some. Myself and Adam sat in on it. And there's multiple counties and cities that use this. In fact, when I went to the Springbrook training this past October, just to give you an idea, Springbrook just signed a big contract with the state of New York. It's a 7-year rollout. That's how long it'll take them. However, it's the full gamut of all of the software, which I think for us to utilize all that software can only be a good thing. So I'm not sure if anybody has any questions about this or.
Maybe quickly add a couple pieces. Right now, our timesheet entry is done in what
Right.
might appear to be a online integrated way, but it's not. So there's errors that can happen there.
Absolutely.
There's some controls about, you know, making sure we know what is overtime hours, what are program costs, because we do divvy out a lot of public works and police. We separate. It's not just 8 hours in a day. It's how many hours they're doing patrol versus training versus the ODOT truck inspections. All of that is captured within the payroll system, so we can compliance for a lot of other things. So timesheet entry is all integrated into the employee portal. All the approvals for that is done online. So rather than hand and signatures and the delays there, all of that is prompted through the online portal. And then we keep track currently of accruals, the various accruals that we have, vacation, sick, floating day, all of that's done on a spreadsheet separate from the payroll system. So again, it's the same thing we've talked about in other areas, is consolidating that all into one system, hits all of these things about control, integration, efficiency. There's quite a bit to payroll, even though we really, you know, we're fairly small, 18 FTE. PERS is a big deal. They do not care what your biweekly days are. You know, when we do our pay periods, it's by the month, and you have to be able to pull that out, parse it per their requirements and upload it. You don't do it right, it's not only an error and a problem, it's people's retirement you're messing with. So that's an important one. And they have specifics. Springbrook, of course, has many Oregon clients. So they have, you know, specific reports and tools that quickly they know how to parse that out and just submit the reports. And of course, it integrates with our accounts payable for all of the payable work that we do. We send checks from payroll through accounts payable out the door, which doesn't happen that way now. We have to manually enter out of the payroll system into accounts payable to get those funds out the door. So a lot to be gained. And one of my selfish pieces to this is it will hopefully give me more access to Greg because he won't be processing payroll as much. We will be doing that shorter, and we can work on more, you know, the items that are in the framework document we'll talk about later, you know, that are longer range financial goals and objectives. And I think that's a residual piece. The very early on, it'll take equal, maybe or more of his time as we do the setup and we get it going. But in quick order, I think we will be gaining significantly in our operational processes.
I don't know how many of you have done software implementations, but they are a really, really big deal, and they do take time and energy. They're typically well worth all of the resources that are put in, and it does then allow you to query data, to get data back that you need, rather than poring over multiple spreadsheets and trying to sort out. So it is a big deal. And I think that Adam and Greg did a really good job, and probably the heavy lifting, Adam, was for you to get this financial commitment down into a reasonable level that we could afford and even consider. So thank you for that, both of you. Done a magnificent job.
Good question.
Counselor
How
Wells.
many employees does the city of Coburg have?
18 currently.
Did you consider, I mean, like a payroll service? I'm sure you did, like an
That's-
ADP or.
That's what we're using. We're using a payroll service
Is
now.
that what you're using now?
So that's the third, that is a third party system. Yeah.
Okay, and this is
And-
less expensive in the long run than a payroll service?
Well, it depends on you'd have to do some cost analysis on that
Right.
because the payroll service does a portion of your total payroll operations. Payroll service does not do everything. So there are still many, many elements of payroll that we do, even though we outsource the production of a payroll check to a third party provider. The third party provider, and it's in the packet here, we spend a little over 3,000 a year for the third party payroll provider. But that doesn't include, as Greg said, does not include the PERS reporting. There's a number of things that we have to do outside of that. So, to answer that question honestly is you have to take into account all the other byproduct benefits of having all of the data integrated into our system, and also the automation of the things that we're doing now that are outside of the 3,000 a year that we pay. So it's not quite an apples to apples, I guess, is what I'm getting at comparison. It's on an annualized basis after the 16.5, on an annualized basis, it's going to be about a little over 3,000 or a little under 3,000 more a year for Springbrook, but it provides us much more ability for, as the mayor said, for analysis, for querying, and also operational time to get back to have our finance director doing other things than payroll. And I've used ADP at a prior place. I haven't used this particular firm, but I've used 2 or 3 other outsource, and they have their role, their place. I think the common misnomer is when you're outsourcing, that means you're not touching payroll, and that's not accurate. You're just touching different elements. They're doing a portion of that on your behalf, but all the benefit changes each year, all of the, when that rolls into the payroll system, we have to update those anyway. Even on a third-party software, Greg spends considerable time on their site updating the back end, and when people change their withholdings and do all that stuff, we still upload and maintain all that data. The software, the third-party provider, calculates and cranks out the check and gets it out the door, and does some basic reports. But we don't get those reports the same way. We have to bring them in Excel. We have to change them around. So I think, in the big picture, this is while not a direct cost savings on a kind of the math, if you add time investment and the opportunity to have our staff do other things, I think it clearly comes out in a positive.
Anything else? Any other questions?
With a
Counselor Smith.
bigger system like this is, as you go on and find different reports or different tools that you need just for Coburg, I assume they're able to customize and add some patches so that you can maybe
Sure, yeah.
customize it to what.
Using
you
the
need
new
as
software.
opposed to just the
Yes.
back-end version.
Absolutely. It has the ability to do that. And that's a huge advantage to be able to customize reports. And I think we put that in here somewhere. We talked about customization of reports.
Mhm.
Certainly that allows you that ability to do that.
And that's where the time comes.
That's
in
where the
with
time, right.
implementation too.
Yep.
And why we're really looking at a robust system and a system that integrates with what we have, rather than say in a few years say, oh, well, that isn't working very well. Now let's go to another thing. And that just is crazy making, having done that before. Don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We want something that's going to be robust enough that carries us into the future and works well with what we've got. Counselor
Yeah,
Engelbrecht.
well, I'll just start with a comment. I know years ago with Springbrook, our city staff wasn't really happy with Springbrook. However, that has changed in recent years, where Springbrook has kind of done a 180-degree change in how they operate and have reinvested into the Springbrook product. And I guess, Mr. Peck brought up the fact that they're engaging with New York
Mhm.
State.
All
So
over, yeah.
clearly that is another indication that they are kind of committed to
right.
this product. So that would make me feel, first of all, more comfortable having an integrated payroll with Springbrook. And then I guess my one question is, it looks like the integration is estimated at 110 hours, which is just under 3 weeks of the consultant's time. Are you, do you feel a little nervous about that, or do you feel like that's probably adequate?
I guess we'll find out, huh?
Yeah.
No,
Still
I,
Be available.
yeah,
by
and I
phone
think,
and all.
yeah, and it's really hard to gauge those sorts of items, you know? But I think the way we're approaching this is we will still have some access to that service if we need it. But
That may be a segue also into the next agenda item, that I think we have, that's a component of the resource that we, hope to be getting there with, someone, that'll augment that has a lot of, payroll, and software, implementation experience as well that we can lean on. But that was the main negotiating point, was the number of hours, and the fact that we don't have unions where we have multiple bargaining groups where everybody is under the same benefit package, everybody's under the same accruals. So having basically one employee handbook that does not have, my prior place, I think I might have mentioned there were 7 different bargaining groups out of the 260 people, which they all had separate rules, right? They all had separate benefit packages, separate plans. So that was one of my negotiating pieces to bring that number down, was that it is uniform through the 18. There aren't variations, which makes it a little more straightforward.
Does make it much more complicated when you have other bargaining.
Yep.
Oh, Counselor Lehman.
So I'm wondering, on the suggested motion, should it read that it's 28,279 instead of 22,387? Because on the next page, it says it would rise to 28,279 with the purchase of the payroll module. That's what we're approving as proposed spring.
No, the contract it includes the first year. We have to prepay the support. So if you look at the attachment, the contract is for $22,387.50. So $28,279 is the combined total of all the support fees across our general ledger, payables, liens, everything. So the contract in front of you, the attached, is $22,387.50, which is the 16.5 implementation and the year 1 support fee.
I'd like to
Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
move to approve the proposed Springbrook payroll software module contract of $22,387.50.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Counselor Rhodes? Yay! Thank you. We have a motion by Counselor Lehman and a second by Counselor Rhodes to approve the proposed Springbrook payroll software module contract of $22,387.50. Is there any further discussion? Oh. Then I'll ask for all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? No. So the motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. And thank you, Craig, for
Yes, thank you.
explaining all that to us and walking us through and helping bring us up into the next century, I think. We're getting there slowly but surely. Okay, our next agenda item is as Adam said, sort of a continuation on this, and that is for the finance professional service agreement with Principal Plan Plus Results LLC. And Greg, you're going to take lead on that, I think,
I think so.
or
Yeah,
Adam?
go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's
Yep, go
okay.
ahead.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. Thank you,
So,
Mayor.
just to remind you all that, the person mentioned in this contract, Cindy, has been working with
Mhm.
Greg for the last 6 months.
Mhm.
We did just an original contract that was 6 months in length. To see sort of where we were at that time, what we felt we still needed, what, Cindy felt like she could provide for us. And so this is an request to continue that contract, and now I will turn it over to Greg.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. And before I kind of get into this, I think it's important to note that in no way, shape, or form is this any sort of condemnation of the former administration or anything like that. How this all came about, bringing in a financial consultant and whatnot, was simply just by doing a basic assessment and picking out a few items that we knew needed to be brought into the future, I guess, or by utilizing new technology, software, whatever you deem it or say. So with that said, we did some work with Cindy Hanks. She's been wonderful. I'm not sure how much you all know about her, but 30 years of experience in local government, working in finance. She knows just about all of it, and she's really, really brilliant when it comes to it. So the time that she spent with me, the one thing that came out of all of this that leads us to today is she was able to do, whether that was the main goal or not, is a total assessment of our financial systems, how we operate, how we go about recording our data, how we go about presenting it, transparency, you name it. She kind of hit on all of that. So with that said, we picked out a few areas that were more or less not so much glaring as to areas we could focus in that would provide us with again, accuracy and efficiency. Our finance department, although its department, is me. So I don't have others to work with me. So it's really important, like Adam mentioned earlier, that we're able to do these types of things with efficiency so that I can spend more time working on things like future revenues or future financial forecasts. Right now, a lot of my time is tied up in the day-to-day operations, keeping the wheels moving on the bus, I guess. So some of the items on here, if you were to go to page 2, we talked about, or I talked a little bit about how we picked out a few things. And then items that we've been working on, monthly reconciliation, that process that we currently use took us a bit to get it down and to figure out how it was being done. The replacement process for it that we've come up for now, and again, some of this stuff is now, well, this stuff is now going to be temporary, that we've created because we're going to push this new payroll system in, which will affect all of this. And by the way, all of this information today and all of these items that we're talking about affect everyone at the city. It's not just the finance department. It affects public works. It affects the folks who work downstairs. It affects every level. So we worked on monthly reconciliation processes. As we reviewed the charts of accounts, looking over our funds, budgets, looking at our budget, the way we do quarterly reports. We realized, okay, well, let's take it to the next level, to the next step. So again, we can achieve accuracy and efficiency. A few of the things that I put on here also, financial system training and utilization, debt service review and strategy. That was something that was really important to me as I got into it, trying to understand how your debt is set up. What are your best options? Are we in a good place? And using our financial consultant really gave me a good perspective and a good understanding of that. But I think, again, some of these items are things that we need to continue into the future. This is although this may not be 50 bullets on here, these 10 or 12 bullets on here is a lot of work. So, and I'm not up here to cry about how busy I am or anything like that. However, we got to keep the wheels on the bus moving. Okay. So, financial systems, debt service review and strategy, financial policies and procedures updates, long-term revenue forecasts. I'd love to be able to do stuff like that, but I simply don't have the time to do that right now. And I think having a financial consultant helping us put all these items in place, making these changes will free us up to be able to do that and run more efficiently. I don't know if you wanted to chime in about any of this.
Yeah, I mean, just the contract itself, you know, really what we're talking about is 8 hours a week, which is, you know, one day a week of highly experienced technical local government financial assistance. And, you know, the top bullets are kind of the operational piece. The ones the bottom four in the arrow, those are really the things that we have talked about. We'll talk about in the next agenda. These are all kind of flowing together agenda items. That's the stuff that we've talked about in the framework and the council goals and our retreat about where we want to get to. The bullets are the things that, you know, not in our way, but needing to be addressed so we can get to those four below it. And I think I've done probably plenty of teasers in our prior financial conversations about what I would like to see coming. And this is a combination of an assessment from Cindy and stuff that I've also you know, seen and pointed out and we've talked about, which are you know, the monthly reconciliation. You know, I think we have a need to have the goal and the target we've already met is having those done the 10th working day after that month is closed, not being at all behind, not a cycle behind on those at all. We've provided the new kind of the format for reporting that. The payroll setup is key. I think that I hope, you know, to me, I had the exact same question that Councillor Ingebretson had about is that number of implementation hours adequate? Are we getting a $16,000 initial estimate and then it goes 5,000 over or 10,000 over, which we don't want. This is a big assistance to payroll implementation. The experience with PERS is really invaluable. It bears repeating that PERS is a beast. It's hard to deal with. A lot of it's archaic, and it's their way. It's kind of like dealing with the railroads. You know, it's their way or no way. So that's a big and it's super important, and we have to have it right all the time. And it has to be timely. It matters that the timeliness of all of these matter a lot. Chart of accounts, you know, is something that I think we've talked about that I think will be more discussion at the budget time. I think there's a lot of cleanup and a lot of project accounting, program accounting availability with revamping the chart of accounts to some degree. We've talked about creating the new funds. That has, you know, there's some work that has to be done with the auditors in order to create funds. It needs to be done carefully to make sure we do them right and how we move them around and how we label the movement of the funds from one fund to another when we create them. So a lot of that stuff is making sure that when we're making a lot of these moves, we do them in a way that is sound, in a way that's got a foundation built, so we don't go back and have to keep messing with them over time. You know, and probably the one bullet in there, you know, that is that I think is going to be extra advantageous is there are some subcomponents of the budget process. The cost allocation methodology, that's it's an underlying piece that doesn't come out. It gets referenced, I think, I would assume in the budget conversations. We'll talk about it when we have our budget process, but updating that's the funds that are general government money that are allocated or a portion paid for by the utilities, by the other funds. There's a requirement to have a sound methodology. There is one currently in place by resolution. I think that is ripe for some relooking and just some of it is strategic and some of it is maybe legal about what we can do versus what we are doing. So there's just there's a big list and there's a big list in every department. This meeting seems to be a little more finance centric on how we were wanting to try and address that list and accomplish the items ultimately that we have in the work plan that we discussed at the retreat.
So, Councillor Lehman.
Yeah, I approve the need and value of this professional services agreement. I just have a little technical question. Why 4.2 hours or 4.2 weeks per month?
That's the, I mean, that's the way it's 172 hours, I think is the, because of different, some weeks have 4, some weeks have 5. That is a, I don't know, my historical normal way of
You put 'em
of
all
doing
together, you
what-
come up with
what it
4.2.
averages out it averages out 4.2 weeks a month.
Some
29th
months
this
have
year.
4 and some have
Yeah,
5.
leap year made it, 4.21. I don't know.
Weeks per quarter.
That's right.
Yeah.
26
That's
pay
fine.
periods.
So with approval of this, the Coburg Finance Department will be like the new and improved Stringbrook and just chugging along to the future.
Well, I will be honest and tell you that Greg and Cindy have been working pretty much in lockstep for the last 6 months. This, and I don't mean to be, off base at all, but this is a new role for Greg too. Greg has done a lot of things and came to us with a skill set that we really needed, but being the director of finance is a real new role.
Sure.
And when you get into municipal, that
Mhm.
becomes very different too.
Right.
I come from a private sector world and I
Where I
was
came from.
pretty okay with budgeting, et cetera. It looks very different in the
Mhm.
public setting. So I think that the expertise that Cindy has been able to bring and
been great.
and
It's been
we're
really-
in lockstep with Greg. And I have certainly talked to Cindy, I've talked to Greg. I just want to be real transparent about that I'm very comfortable with this, but certainly it is a council decision.
Thank you.
Counselor
Is-
Wells.
Do you see this as an ongoing thing year to year? Or is this something that working with her for this next year, you'll have,
Sure.
you'll learn what she has to teach you and we won't have to do this?
Right, yeah.
next year?
Absolutely. I think this year, given all of the items we'd like to complete, we're pretty confident that we can do this within the year. I think it's always important for any organization to, keep its be open to, talking to a financial consultant at any time. However, I think this 1-year stint for us is what I need or what the city needs as well. So
What I'm seeing in my position is that we're utilizing internal expertise and contracting with external experts
Mhm.
to get very finite issues addressed rather than sending it all out. So much in the past, we have depended on LCOG. And so
Mhm.
we've shifted money from LCOG, those contractors who are much more generalists. And we're now asking in the same way that we had Carrie come tonight with very specific legal input. That's her area of expertise is municipal governance. LCOG, they're great and they do many good things for us, but they are much more general and are split in many different ways. So it is not only our hope, but our goal that by the time this contract ends, we won't need this level of support within
Thank you.
our departments.
Yeah, Councilor Wells, I'll add possibly that in the next round, it's speculative and we'll be having lots of conversations about this, in budget and over time, but I would foresee financial professional services after this probably being debt service related. And that's a different set of skills and a different arena when we look at some of our debt analysis after we do this debt service review and strategy. That probably culminates with having someone from a firm like Seattle Northwest or something that is in that world that can advise us on what's available, what's smart, timing, various things. So I would like
to always have, just as we have in the budgets for Public Works, we have professional services. We have a professional services line item in planning as well. So as the mayor is saying, all of our services, we have an amazing 18 people, but it is not a complete comprehensive skill set in all of the different worlds that we operate in. So the answer for this one is, I don't think this style, this is really behind the curtain finance review and tear down and rebuild in a way. That isn't an ongoing operational work. We shouldn't do at this dollar amount. And there's a different strategy for some of that may free him up differently. That may be FTEs, that may be something different. But I don't foresee this scope and this duration happening again.
Councilor Engelbrechtson.
Yeah, I just kind of want to chime in and add a little bit. I think, in the past, Coburg we're kind of growing up but we have spent a lot of time in our finance department getting caught up or reacting to issues and getting caught up. So now I think we're at a good place where we can really dig in and create some good standard practices and then document those practices for the finance department, which we probably just haven't had enough time to do in the past, just running around trying to keep the wheels on, as you said. So I think this would be really helpful. Also, it's something that I always was hoping we could do, but it seems like the momentum is there now. So I'm glad about that, because to have a good framework for your finance department with those standard practices documented and understood, it just gives more peace of mind that, if an error happens, it's not going to fall through the cracks, because there's a process and procedures that the staff understand. It also helps with business continuity in that, if somebody has to be out for a little while to the hospital or heaven forbid, but you have a policy written down or a process written down. Yes. Yeah. If you have to go, yeah, you get to go on a big vacation, right? You have processes documented so that others might be able to pick up and fulfill some of the tasks. So, I think there's a lot of value in doing this very thorough review and kind of reset of our processes in accounting.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? If not, I will entertain a motion. Dr. Will?
I move to approve a financial consulting professional services contract with Cindy Hanks Plan and Results LLC for a period of 1 year, consistent with the scope, oversight, and terms proposed and presented, not to exceed a total expense of $36,000 over the contract term.
A second.
And a second. Lehman, thank you. There is a motion by Councilor Wells and a second by Councilor Lehman to adopt the City of Coburg Framework for Continued Progress. Oh, wrong one. Where am I? Oops, sorry, I lost track there. Thank you. There is a motion by Councilor Wells and a second by Councilor Lehman to approve the financial consulting professional service contract with Cindy Hanks, known as Plan Plus Results LLC, for a period of 1 year, consistent with the scope, oversight, and terms proposed and presented, and not to exceed a total expense of $36,000 over the 12-month contract term. Is there any further discussion? We signify all those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 6-0. If I can just put one thing in, Councilor Wells, before you go.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. And you told me this was going to happen. I do want to remind you, and Sammy sent out Thursday of last week, that the information on the SEI reports, those open on March 15th. They close on April 15th. And this came through on one of my listservs. So what happens if you don't file your SEI? on time, well, you may be subject to civil penalties outlined in ORS 244.3504. And these penalties automatically begin to accrue in your account if you miss the filing deadline. Civil penalties are $10 per day for the first 14 days and $50 per day thereafter, to a maximum of $5,000 for the filing period. So get them done.
They haven't, yeah, we don't have them yet, do we? Okay.
They open
They're
on
just
the
starting to come out.
15th. Sammy
gonna
sent
say.
out the notice
You
last
you sent
week,
out the notice, I'm going, well, where is it?
and they will come.
Yeah.
Brandon, we'll go over this in orientation.
And
Deciding who to ask what that is.
Sammy will help us
Thanks, yeah.
and make sure that we all get it done. But I just wanted you to be aware, this really is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
We have
I don't want
actually had
anybody-
a planning commissioner fine several $1,000s.
It happens.
Curious.
Yeah, it happens.
I got one
You're welcome.
question because I did it last year, but, do we have access to what we filled in last year?
It
so
sort
that
of
we can
comes
look at it?
back up.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
And do we have to do two, one for the URA? No. Okay,
No.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't want any of us
No,
fined.
thank you for that. You guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Have a good rest of your evening. All right, now we'll go on to the council goals and framework for continued progress. This is a council action item. And it's a staff report by Adam Hanks.
Thank you. Yeah, this is keep calling it the framework document. This is kind of the meat of our conversation at the retreat last month. That day, thank you all for that day, by the way. I thought that was I got a lot out of it. I appreciated everybody's time. And it appeared through our exercises and discussion that the framework document pretty much contained in the kind of the macro umbrella categories that we have. We have the 5 kind of framework categories and then 4 objectives inside each of those 5 categories for a total of what would that be? That's 5 times 4, that's 20. 20 initiatives or objectives. I don't know that if the terminology matters too much. We'll probably evolve into some terminology that maybe makes a little more sense to everyone. But the idea is that this really is the framework to start kind of building up to a strategic plan. And these contain a lot of they're large enough to be a bit strategic themselves and comprehensive to tackle a topic rather than just be tasks that, we could go through and probably put 20 or 30 tasks per item if we wanted to ultimately. But it covers a lot of ground, and I was really I really liked the outcome of the exercise on the board or on the wall that we did, and really sorting and finding that nearly everything that counselors put up had a place in the framework. And so if this is the direction council wants to go, I think the next steps, and this is more than a year's worth of work. But what within that year will be putting a lot more meat on the bones to each of those 20 items, putting some timelines together, and probably reconvening some sort of a work session or a mini retreat or something to be able to kind of do the prioritization part. That's one piece that we all recognize at the retreat that we really didn't do in earnest is a prioritization of this. And I think it's harder to do when they're at this kind of higher level. As we start putting a little more to them, I think the prioritization, because you all need to know some estimated costs, some estimated staff time, some other regulatory things in order for you to be able to smartly prioritize. So we just didn't have everything put together yet to do that part, but that's coming. And I'll put forward some other ideas for how we evolve this in future retreats, like I say, into somewhat of a strategic plan, strategic doing. I've heard there's a lot of different conversations about what is a strategic plan, how valuable it is, what is it really, what should it be instead, which is fun fun stuff to chat about too. But for tonight, we're kind of memorializing the framework and the 20 objectives inside of it. And with an understanding that that's going to guide what we do and what we point different requests and actions to nest inside of and regularly report on those and build them out over time for how we accomplish them, when we accomplish them, and in what order.
Any questions? Any comments? In my time on council, this is an evolutionary process. So in my time on council, which is relatively short, 6, 8 years now, maybe, I don't know, something like that. I have seen us move from very nebulous sort of ideas to the sheet that we had before that really was more like a checklist of tasks. This now is sort of that next step up that can allow us through the next year, the next few years, to really flesh this out and help guide us in terms of what our next steps are. So we are continuing to grow and morph and change, you know, sometimes whether we like it or not, but I think these are all good things, and I'm pretty pleased with what we came up as a document with your help. So at this point, if are there no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to adopt the City of Coburg's framework for continued progress as the common goals and objectives to be utilized as the basis for future council staff and financial planning over the course of the upcoming 2024-2025 fiscal year.
Thank you, Doc. Councilor Fox. Do I have a second? Second. For Smith. I have a motion by Councilor Fox and a second by Councilor Smith to adopt the City of Coburg framework for continued progress as the common goals and objectives to be utilized as the basis for future council, staff, and financial planning over the course of the upcoming 24-25 fiscal year. Is there any further discussion? No? Okay, then I will ask you to signify all those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? No. So the motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And then we have the administrative monthly report, which is in the red folder. Were there any things that you wanted to hit on that, Adam? I found the state shared revenue quite interesting.
The state of the city?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, it was a nice follow-up.
Yeah, the state of the city,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, it's last month we had the other one. So there are two
Right.
good documents
That's
coming out of League of
right.
Oregon Cities. And yeah, I thought it was too. I thought it was interesting to share that. The macro takeaway is that many cities, probably most, are in very similar wrestling and grappling with very similar things, very similar issues. Unfortunately, well, financially related. Probably, I don't necessarily, I think, just a hit up there, everybody's probably walked by it, but I think it's going to really even pop more as spring hits, but the Veterans Memorial project that Brian led with his team turned out really nice.
A lot of support.
Yeah, a lot of work from
The-
everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
Parks and Trees Committee and a lot of actual work out there with the planting and all, but it was a combined effort.
Yes, very much. And that it's neat to do those collaborative sort of projects when they're able to be done. Sometimes we end up getting into projects that by legal liability, risk, whatever, that we can't do the collaborative part. We got to find those sweet spots where we have these collaborative opportunities. So that one was really good. The fiber grant for the operations center is one that I think that grant happened before I got here, but we did not execute it until just 2 weeks ago. Just wanted to let you all know that it was executed, and that is going to facilitate connecting both of those facilities to our network, fiber connection that we own the dark fiber, and then also it lights up, gives us lighted fiber for internet access as well. And that's going to lay some groundwork for some future network and security and all of our IT to have those buildings connected up. So that's great. And that project is slowly moving along. It's one that we'll have to give some next month. We'll maybe do a highlight of that project because it's one that you don't otherwise see. It's stuck out there in the corner, but they're at the footings stage, so it's not super exciting. Once it gets framed up, it visually looks better, but it is moving forward.
And DFN was chosen to take their network out to a lot of our surrounding cities, the areas that were considered underserved or unserved. So Mohawk Valley, Cresswell, out in many of the rural areas that we've seen on the news since the storm, that many of those families and people in those areas have not had any kind of service for several weeks, if not a couple of months. So
yeah,
DFN is recognized as doing some pretty good work, and fiber optic is much more robust than our above ground lines.
Yeah, they're hardening them with a lot of going underground
Yes.
where they can with some FEMA funds. Yeah, a lot of good work going on. A lot of good work statewide on broadband. The
Yes.
state has really
really
emphasized
good.
broadband in the hard to reach areas. And actually our project does allow DFN, when they create the loop of the dark fiber, we own a portion of it, but they're continuing down North Coburg. So it extends their infrastructure for others to connect that don't currently have.
I understand that they're going to be going out bottom loop
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, this relates, not sure if it's directly or
Yeah, I
It's-
don't know
it's connected
exactly how that
in
goes. but-
operationally connected. Yeah. So the way the grant works is we got a grant from the Regional Fiber Consortium, which we're a member of. And then we signed a contract with DFN to using those funds to execute the project.
And the rare opportunity, do you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, it's a great one. And Brian just was at a meeting with the Muddy Creek irrigation board today to verify that they do want to, they are interested in collaborating on it. I think the majority of the work on this grant will be Coburg centric, but they have much less resources, much less available. And so our work, I think, it's a nice natural collaboration, a natural partner to use for this water quality TMDL work. And it's a competitive grant. We didn't come through and ask to apply. I think we've informally talked about it before. The money never hits the city. It's just paid directly. So we don't have any money coming in or out. We just get the resource and we manage the resource of a rare person. And as would imagine you all know that Megan, our planner, was a rare, so she is super excited to work with Brian and help manage the program because she loves rare. And I've had rare people in prior places, and you get a lot for the money. Even when you're paying for it, you get a lot, and we're hopefully not even having to pay for it. But this will really move forward a lot of our stormwater, water quality regulatory requirements, and that's really why the grants are there. It's to not to have too much on the unfunded mandate side of the ledger, and to actually provide some resources to lessen some of those unfunded mandates for the regulatory side. We should know, we'll be applying, I think, next week or two. Yeah. Yep. I don't know what the timeline is for when we'll know, but as soon as we know, we will let you all know.
So, Brian, thank you for putting up the warning signs on our unimproved trails. I think that that was important for those of us that walk on those trails. We noticed that Public Works put up caution tape and people just walked through it. I know this is a big surprise to everybody, but they just, one gentleman, I didn't go on the trail because the caution tape was around, and he came out the end of the trail as I was down on the paved road, and I said, well, I thought that path was closed. Oh, no, it's fine. I thought, okay, but the short session of legislature did rule, make some movement on recreational immunity. So that was good news for all of our cities in Oregon, and hopefully will keep cities from being sued when you're taking a path which isn't called recreation.
Yeah, that's still a little bit evolving, and we happened to, this one worked out well for the storm remnants and for the recreational immunity issue, and it's probably not bad regardless, just to remind people that our unpaved trails are, the whole point of them is to stay semi, natural space, and they inherently have a little bit more risk associated with them. So it doesn't make us completely, free from litigation. I don't think anything in the world does anymore. But I think, Brian put that together. I think it's smart. It's got, we kept the language very summary level. There's different cities that were doing much more legal specific language, but I think this hits our point. And then if and when we have some direct results of legislation for recreational immunity, and we get from our insurance provider that we alter that language, we will. That's why we just bought the 3 signs to get that going, and we may need to alter them. But I prefer, as long as we're legally covered, I prefer the language that Brian came up with.
That was good. I haven't seen anybody standing studying. That's okay. They're there, and I appreciate that. Anything else? Any police? Chief Larson, your staff remains really busy. I was very, very happy to see the post that you did on Facebook about our new officer. So it sounds like he's going to be a good fit for the department. And is he at the academy now? Okay. Week 2. And
Yeah.
that's how long? 16 weeks. So it takes a while to train up these officers, the initial training, and then the training continues on for all of our officers. But anytime you have anybody new come in, as we all know, it's that integration into the team and making sure that everything is fit. And Cobourg has certain expectations, and I don't think those are wrong. It's just, I think we have to pay attention to what our citizens want.
Yeah, and that was actually fortunate. Chief Larson was able to get him in on an earlier round. COVID and other issues have made that really backed up at the academy. So I think we're doing good. I was pleasantly surprised that we were able to get Officer Smith in there as soon as we did. And then we lose him for 16 weeks, but we get him back quicker than if we had to wait on the backlog. So they are improving their backlog at the state level.
And he has been a reserve here how long? 5 or 6 years. So he's familiar with the community and with the people he's going to be working with. And that's always, in my mind, a plus. And the finance report, any questions, comments, input? I like the new format. I think it's easier to read for me. Again, I'm used to private sector, not public. Counselor Fox.
Yes, Counselor Wells's objections notwithstanding, I absolutely love the new presentation. It allows me to read it easier than the spreadsheet before, and actually possibly articulate a question or two. So I will go forward and say math was my absolute worst subject. And that continues to this day, but regardless, I have a few things. The budget to actual is great, and comparing years and seeing percentages, which I can be 2,000% off and speak about $25, and you can be 3% off and speak about $200. Yeah. That said, under the franchise fees, we have 125,000 and 279,000, and it's a 10% difference. And I'm terrible at math, but I'm just thinking that is nowhere near 10% difference.
You are right.
You're right.
We went through it.
That's right on the first page.
Okay.
158
Page
franchise
two.
fees, yeah. The numbers are accurate. The math on that, yeah, we must have something messed up on that column. We missed, Greg and I missed that in our review.
Counselor
Good eye.
Fox.
Yeah, well, it goes on. So maybe we need a formula check.
Yeah, we do.
Because when we get to page 3, we have bond proceeds, which are excelling the budget by 248,000, but it's a 0% difference. So
Can you say that again?
that would not be a
Oh,
0%
bond
difference.
proceeds.
Okay. And then, there's a couple others, I can bring that up later. But I do have a question on one. We're on page 4 or 160, however you're looking at it. To the water fund, under expenditures, we have the administration department, of which $6 million was budgeted to be spent by now. And we spent $885,000. Congratulations. How did we do that?
Well, it's not a good thing, actually. No, it's not a bad thing either, though. So what that is, the full loan proceeds of 4.6 million were allocated in that budget year for water projects. We have gone slower, mostly purposefully, than I think what was initially projected to spend out. So that administration department, we're going to show it different next year. We're going to at least propose it to show it different, is to break out administration department. Kind of the terminology is a little bit of a misnomer, and then it's also clumped. It includes materials and services and capital together. So if you look at it on
I took it
the
as staff, but I was like, wow. Budget on
They are
staff.
played very well.
if you look at the water fund on 165, it's slightly better. In terms of at least it breaks out materials and services from capital. It's the same stuff. So the biggest variance of why we're well under budget is the full, we take the we expend on a project, on a water project, and then we submit for disbursement of the funds up to the 4.6 million. We're about 2.8 million in on that 4.6 million. So we will be providing you all an update of where we are on that, as we promised, when the Consor capacity study. That's kind of the time when I think we want to show you the capacity study, and then we want to show you a proposed potentially alteration of the timing or which projects we use the rest of those funds for. It may be right in line with what was originally proposed. The capacity study may tell us, hey, double down on supply, don't do storage, so we want to make sure that of that remaining amounts, we have, we're using it wisely. So yeah, that one is temporarily robust.
All right.
Anything else? Good eye. Counselor Fox, math may not have been your best subject, but your eyes are very good, and thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
That's a good one. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Under mayor's comments, really, and council comments, we will do a couple of proclamations. Pages to turn. First of all, we'll do the proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I will just read this. Every child is a precious, unique gift who deserves the security of a healthy home. We all have the responsibility as individuals, neighbors, community members, and citizens of Coburg to help create healthy, safe, nurturing experiences for children. Preventing child abuse and neglect is a community value that depends on the involvement and education of citizens throughout the community. Safe and healthy childhoods help produce confident, successful adults, which we need more of. Child abuse and neglect are not only directly harm children, but the trauma can also increase the likelihood of health problems, alcohol and substance abuse, continued family violence, and criminal behavior. Effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships among social service agencies, schools, faith communities, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. We acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase awareness about child abuse and contribute to promoting the social and emotional well-being of children in a safe, stable, nurturing environment. I, Nancy Bell, Mayor of Coburg, City of Coburg, do hereby proclaim April 2024 as Child Abuse Prevention Month and call upon all citizens and community agencies, faith groups, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to support children and their families in living safe and healthy lives, therefore preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live. So this is proclaimed this 12th day of March of 2024. Child abuse prevention is near and dear to my heart. As many of you know, I was a pediatric nurse for many years and saw many different things. And next we have, this is more on an upbeat note, the Arbor Day proclamation. As you all know, Coburg is a tree city. We want to keep it that way. We want to plant more trees. We want to nurture our trees. We want to maintain our trees. So in 1872, Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. That special day became known as Arbor Day. It was observed by the planting of more than 1 million trees in the state of Nebraska. Wow. Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Trees can reduce the erosion of precious topsoil by wind and water, lower heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and create woodlands and habitats for wildlife. Trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. In keeping up with the spirit of Sterling Morton's dream, I, Nancy Bell, Mayor of the City of Coburg, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2024 as Arbor Day in the City of Coburg, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. And that's only if you have room for another tree. I'm not sure I do. But we do have pictures in our packet or in the red folder. I believe, where are they? Where did I see them? Oh, right there in the packet of the kids from the charter school celebrating Arbor Day in 2023. Those are great pictures, and I know the kids love that. And this looks like it was a beautiful sunny day, and that was great. And we would all hope that that will be the case for this April Arbor Day too. And I think Sterling Morton was a very smart man, because the things that he is laying out and proclaiming with Arbor Day are certainly things that have come back and are brought to the forefront all of the time. This is Coburg's 25th year as the Tree City USA, in case you were wondering. And we do have a tree ordinance, and we dedicate an annual community forest budget of $2 per capita. And we do observe Arbor Day, and we do maintain the tree and Parks Committee, which helps keep our trees. And some of our trees are heritage trees. And we do also know, as sad as it is, that trees have a lifespan. And so sometimes our beautiful trees don't live forever, just like anybody else. So, but we do replant, and I applaud the Parks and Trees Committee. And I do applaud our Public Works Committee in keeping our trees in good health. I do want to go over the appointed liaisons for this year. So our Finance and Audit Committee liaison is Counselor Wells. Heritage Committee is Counselor Fox, and I believe that is a continuation for you. And for Lane Act, which is a very important committee, Counselor Fox and Counselor Engleson, I'm sorry, my tongue's getting fat, I think, will be sort of co-doing that, because that is a committee that you really do need to have a presence on. And so we know that there are things that come up. Main Streets, Counselor Rhodes, would you be willing to serve on Main Streets? That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. And MPC, I will continue serving on that. Parks and Tree Committee will be Counselor Smith, and Counselor Smith was actually a very active member of that committee for many years and has continued on as liaison. And the Planning Commission liaison will be Counselor Lehman, which is a new role for you this year. And that's terrific. So because several of you mentioned to me that we needed sort of roles and responsibilities for the counselor liaison, I believe those are also in your packet. So you can sort of take a look at those. Those are in draft version, and I worked on them, and Adam worked on them, and Sammy added some things to them. So take a look and see if there are any questions or anything that is unclear with that.
Can you explain the quasi judicial function there?
The quasi judicial function, Planning Commission is a quasi judicial group. So the things that are discussed and decided in Planning Commission, bring us to a higher standard. We can't go out as a liaison or as a council member or a member of that committee and have open conversations with the community at large.
Is that on any discussion or any decision?
That is on discussions within that could impact how those decisions are made.
Yeah, it really relates to planning actions. Applications before the Planning Commission they're quasi judicial because in the state law, the Planning Commission has the ability legally and authority to make decisions for the city. They are actually, the other committees are advisory. That's the only committee that is a decision-making body. And the added challenge on the liaison to a quasi judicial commission like the Planning Commission is the council in some cases by law is hears appeals or on a legislative, a type 4 gives the commission does a recommendation and the council decides. So it depends on what role. So it makes it a little bit dicier as a liaison about what your ability is because it's ex parte context. So when you're making the decision, and if you're the sitting council person on an appeal, an applicant may have a claim that, you've had ex parte contact that you didn't declare, making the decision questionable or appealable to LUBA or lawsuit. So it's the only one that has this extra little piece. And I don't know, Sammy may have some materials, and I know League of Oregon Cities has materials to kind of help guide that piece. It's not a major thing. It's just when there's actually planning applications being discussed and decisions made, if they ever get appealed to council, you need to declare that you were at that meeting, you were a liaison, but it doesn't bias your.
Not all committee meeting is in that role.
Right, exactly, right, yeah.
It can sort of lead, if if I were on the planning commission or attending it, and then as a council member, as a liaison, and then I came out and I said to, to Kathy or to my neighbor, oh, they're talking about doing this. Well, that can sort of lead down that path.
Yeah, we can give you some framework on it, just to stay clear of it. I think you'll be able to. It's just a reminder that it's just natural to kind of take maybe a micro step past what that quasi judicial role really allows.
Council Fox.
If I heard you correctly, it is, the planning commission is the only quasi judicial committee.
Correct. Yep, by state law.
I just
Tammy.
wanted to add, to really protect yourself, I would just write down, keep a notebook, conversation, if it's anything to do with planning city on this date, conversation with this person, because it is just disclosing it to.
Yeah, most of that is, you're safe by when you get here, as long as you declare ex parte contact, that's what is. The real problem is if it's not declared, then there's an opening for someone to appeal or claim bias to the decision and all that. And while it is technically limited to planning applications, actual development applications that the commission makes decisions on, it doesn't hurt to kind of keep track, because pure legislative stuff that is, that they're bringing for like a comp plan change, that doesn't involve, that's not quasi judicial, right? But it exists in and around that commission. So we can give a little cheat sheet to you on it.
And we've all had to declare ex parte contact previously. We were talking about land use issues and, oh yes, I walked that property. I talked to this neighbor or that neighbor, they came up to me and so those are just sort of reminders for us all.
Yeah, and the part that says, number 3 under responsibilities, if a committee asks for liaisons' opinions, liaison may make a personal opinion. If it's a planning application, you probably don't do that as a quasi judicial. You don't state your opinion because your opinion comes later in the process. Your opinion shouldn't come then, and can mess up the process if it does come too early. But
hopefully these will be helpful. If you have any questions or comments on them, then, bring them back to us, and they're a working document, as most things are for us.
And Mayor, maybe add the last little piece that the 3 of us talked about relating to the this little responsibilities cheat sheet is also on the agenda, the title of that last section, council comments and liaison updates. So I think the conversation and the goal there of adding and liaison updates to that category is, to try and complete that circle of what a liaison appointment really is. It's to feed back to the rest of the council who aren't attending those
Right.
meetings,
Exactly.
a little brief summary about what each of those groups are up to.
So sort of the 30,000 foot and
Yeah.
maybe a 2 to 5 minute conversation and by, under the mayor and council comments at the end of each meeting.
That we just added as a little prompt to reminder. It'd be great to just have everybody give a 30-second of whatever meeting they attended the prior time and what they were talking about.
Because it is nice for all of us to know that things are happening and our chairs of those committees and commissions come back on an annual basis and sort of give us their goals or whatever, but that doesn't really tell us what's going on a monthly basis. And those committees and commissions work really hard. Those people are there and they are committed to really doing a good job. So it's nice to be able to recognize them. Upcoming agenda items. Are we ready to move on? Upcoming agenda items, the audit report did finally come in.
We got it.
Yes. It was a tooth pulling exercise. Engineer RFP, remember we had talked about a year ago that we would at about this time start looking at other engineering companies, or at least putting out an RFP to see what's out there and who we might want to have involved. Not that our current engineering company isn't doing a good job, but we haven't looked in a while, so it's sort of time to take a look at that. Heritage Committee will be meeting on March 13th. Park and Tree Committee meets on the 19th. The 20th is Planning Commission. We'll have on the 26th of March, we'll have the Urban Renewal Agency, and that's a special meeting. Will you all be able to attend on the 26th?
We sort of talked about that one last time, so hopefully yeah, because that was normally a work session slot. We're squeezing in a few more
Tuesday.
things. Yeah.
Do happen to have a conflict. I had to schedule I was able to schedule a trip to go visit some family members that are having some health issues, so I may not be able to, that's a travel day, so I
Okay.
may not be able to come, just to let y'all know.
Thank you.
It's also a possibility I won't be able to attend because I have a planned trip.
Okay,
Not sure when I'm heading to Eastern Oregon.
all right.
Better leave from there. It's okay.
So I will do a poll, it sounds like, because we do need to
Right.
have
We
a
need a
quorum,
quorum.
otherwise we'll just have to figure out a different date
Yep.
to make that work. So
Yeah.
I'll get everybody
So
pulled
we know we have
tomorrow.
two potential or conflicts, so.
The goal for that meeting, there's a requirement for, there's some annual things that happen with urban renewal. And then we also wanted to use that slot to present the audit and then also do the approval of the capital improvements plan that we had the meeting about last time. So that's the objective of that meeting. But as Sammy said, we can pull it, move it around to make sure we have a quorum. And of course, more than a quorum is always our objective. We want to get everybody if we can. So, and I think the idea with the 26 was also to invite Finance Audit Committee and the Budget Committee to kind of listen to the audit. And there's nothing extraordinary about the audit. I don't want to overhype it, but procedurally, I think it's just a smart thing to do before we submit it to Secretary of State. And we're on draft B, which I think is pretty much our final. We had some changes that we did earlier in the week that Greg and I met with the auditors. So clarified a few things. So I think we're in good shape to have the auditor actually come by Zoom and talk about it a little bit. And then it's really not approving, adopting, or accepting. It's kind of acknowledging is probably the best word, because the audit is the audit. We have to submit it, regardless of whether we like it or not. But it is a chance to review it and understand it a little bit better. But we'll move it if we have to move it.
And then the Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee committee will be meeting again on March 28th. And I think that there is a Main Street event that's also on the 28th.
Ooh, that's right. Is it the same day? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Wednesday.
Was it? I put it on my calendar. Let me check it.
Yeah, I think Megan had sent out a date and then she did an update on the date, and I think it fell on the same day as the Transportation Committee, because I was,
I have it for Wednesday, the 27th at 4:30. Hopefully that's right.
I
But maybe that's not the most recent.
think it.
We'll
I
we'll add
think
that
the
to our.
update was
yeah.
the 28th, but I could be wrong
Okay.
also.
Another traffic.
Traffic Ad Hoc Committee is definitely on the
Yeah,
28th.
that's what I thought. Okay.
Yes.
So the Main Street event, it looks like Brandon and I collaborated here. Looks like it is the 27th at 4:30, that Main Street.
Okay.
Commute
so
Quarterly.
I stand corrected on.
And
that.
then we're Thursday for the Transportation ad hoc. Busy week, and happens to be spring break.
Yes. Oh, good question.
It's a
Community meeting.
yeah, it's just a quarterly, that they're trying to get off the ground, right?
Yeah, we had roundtable community meetings and then with all the festivals and stuff, we kind of tabled those and looked at reworking what they looked like. And so the plan is to start having those community meetings with a back and forth focus each month.
Quarterly,
One
right.
would be business and one would be community roundtable.
Not a city meeting, but we definitely we want to try and not have conflicting multiple meetings, but
So you all think that's the 27th?
My email says.
Wednesday, 4:30, is that right, Brandon? Yeah.
All right, well, I've got myself very confused then.
Yep.
Oh,
They're
that's
gonna-
good.
Try to keep those on the same day at
Okay.
the same time every month is the plan.
Off schedule. Anyway, okay, so 27th. All right, well, I won't muck about with that. So is there anything else for the good of the order?
I do have a report from Parks.
Oh.
As liaison, if you want it.
Yes.
So with Arbor Day, they wanted to let you know that they have chosen Johnny Diamond Park, and I think they're going to do, and Brian can correct me if I'm wrong, about 5 trees. And there'll be smaller trees that will go along the fence line on the inside of the fence. And then also they had worked real hard on the rose garden. Tom, who is now the chair, is also an arborist and put a lot of time and energy into researching the roses. And also making sure that they had some pertinence to the branch of service that they represent either by name or by color. And there was also a comment, if council had any feedback for Parks or any feedback on the goals, how you felt their yearly goals looked, so. I'll take that back to them. If you want to look at it, talk about it next council meeting, that's fine.
It's on the spot.
Yeah.
But I don't recall that there were any changes that I had. They seemed very clear and very, very concise. Very ambitious, as always. Parks and Tree tends to be pretty ambitious and lots of, was there something on there about community involvement and getting volunteers or no?
You know, they always want volunteers to come for those park work sessions. They do a cleanup every month. Typically, the members of the Parks Committee, they're starting to pull in a few more people as people walk by, but I think that any kind of vehicle that could be created that would help encourage volunteerism or whatever would be welcome.
Just a clarification, any volunteer has to fill out the form.
Mhm.
And I think Sammy has them here and also Parks Committee members have them if you. I think they usually have them with them at the site, so if you walk by and
case.
decide you.
You're
wanna
pulling people off the
pull-
street,
pull-
hopefully.
Literally, pull a few weeds, the form is there for you.
They have gloves too, or, you know,
Yeah,
bring your own.
It's up to you, yeah, provide your own equipment.
Right, what I recall. Okay. Was there any recommendation from the Parks Committee in terms of trees down at the Veterans Memorial area?
There was nothing at the meeting
Okay,
when we were planning the rose bushes and the boxwood at the memorial. The chair, Tom, had just offhand mentioned that it might be nice to do another one of those heritage type cherry trees to create a corridor all along that
That is
sidewalk
so-
to balance it out. There's one behind the bench now,
right,
which he could actually do a great little spiel on Coburg's trees and the types and which ones are important and heritage and why. He's pretty knowledgeable, so is Lana. But it was just the thought as he got it all in and stepped back and wow, it might be nice to balance it out, so.
okay. So that area that's sort of fenced off now that was.
Yeah, to
The
reseed
grass.
it or whatever.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
Brian probably has some.
Thoughts on that? No, no thoughts, no thoughts at all. It's too late in the day for thoughts. Yeah.
It will be on the Parks and Tree.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. And please extend our thanks to the Parks and Trees Committee also for all the work they do. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:17. Thank you for getting through a very hefty agenda.
They start working out,
Thank you.
I believe it.
Thank you for
They're
being,
much better
they
these
aren't always that thick.
Smokes alive.
And we'll get your picture officially, I guess. We'll leave that up to
Yeah,
Sammy.
nice
Is
to
that
have
what
a
we were gonna do?
The
An invite for another meeting. And also
here with 0%.
Yes.
Down here with 0.
Yep, I got those.
think
Yep.
that there isn't a column formula.
Yep,
So maybe get rid of any NAs.
Yep, that's probably what's messing it up. It didn't carry, the first NA probably messed it up and it messed it up the rest of the way down. Yep.
Just
Okay.
kept on
Yep, We
going.
will get that fixed. Thanks for spotting it.
That's good job. Ah,
I need a separate notebook for this.
Yeah.
I love it every time I watch
Oh,
it. That looks so good.
in progress. My firm.
Yeah, public contracting, that's, you started a pretty dry topic.
Yeah,
That's about as dry as it gets. That's.
yeah.
No, the
Private
audit
employee-
report is
Well,
more, is
yeah, the audit report,
more,
yeah, it can
in
be-
my
My
opinion.
last administrative job having to like justify the smallest of
I
requests.
know,
like, no,
that makes.
I can appreciate having.
Sense. I so appreciate
Yeah.
that, really.
ORS is
A great
over the top.
ad.
It's required over the years. It just keeps getting harder and harder and harder to.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Most cities will have a purchasing department. You know, so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone later, I thought, he's gotta get a picture and all that.
Yeah.
So.
We'll have all the follow-up.
Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome aboard.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you wanna hit this in the morning?
I can be quick about it. I
You wanna be
mean,
quick? Okay, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So we have, we're still working our way through. We just kind of made some notes about our public
Yeah.
notice, but that is not yours. Here you are.
mhm.
So, yeah, we've been going,
Okay.
for the past 2 or 3 weeks, looking at how, how problematic is this? I mean, it's way.
It is like 10 feet in.
It's 11 and a half,
It's
12.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it angles a little bit. It's between 11 and 13 feet, depending on where it is. So.
And does he know this, Brandon?
I talked to Asia. I have not met the husband yet,
Oh, okay.
but she came into
Yeah,
the bookstore for the
I
book sale this
finished
weekend and
on.
like introduced herself finally. I was like, wait, hang on, we gotta talk about your fence, cause I'm worried. I didn't know, and she was speaking as if she was out of the loop about some of this.
It probably, I mean, we have been changing road profile and a lot of, I mean, if you look at all of these, we're at that 90% stage and then we had to do
Yeah.
a lot of manipulating. So a lot of this